Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective on Drought and Hydrologic Conditions for April of 2020. I am Megan Schargorodski with the Kentucky Climate Center, and I will be your moderator today. Today we have Stuart Foster, who is the director of the Kentucky Climate Center and the state climatologist for Kentucky, who will be leading the main portion of the webinar. We also have Matt Dixon from the Ag Weather Center, who will be contributing some of the agricultural impacts that we have seen across the state. For those who are new, we have a general layout of the webinar. We have a look back on what has happened, and we talk about the agricultural impacts that we've seen. And then we have a look forward into the future of what we expect over the next couple of months. And then we'll end with a question and answer section. So if you have any questions, please feel free to either type them into the chat box on Zoom or just hold your question until the end and we'll give you an opportunity to ask. This will be recorded, so you'll have the opportunity to review any information that you may have missed or get some other details. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Dr. Foster, who will get us started.
All right. Thanks, Megan. I appreciate that, and welcome everyone to the webinar today, and especially to some of our new members here in the audience. Want to take just a moment to acknowledge the very difficult situation that we're dealing with now with the COVID-19 situation. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the folks that are suffering from that, and we're kind of trying to deal with the new reality of how we operate. So the webinar series, again, is hosted here through the Kentucky Climate Center in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information System and in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. And we work very closely with a number of partners here across the state, including the UK Ag Weather Center, Kentucky Division of Water, and many others that contribute to these webinars. Our next webinar will be on May 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time. So we're entering the spring season, transitional time of year, and things are greening up. So we've been through a relatively warm winter, actually a quite warm winter, and past seeing things progressing quickly. So as Megan mentioned, we'll talk about recent conditions, starting with temperature and precipitation, and then getting into soil moisture, stream flows. Not too much to talk about drought-wise here in Kentucky at the moment, but we'll look at things nationally too, talk a little bit about flooding, and then get into impacts and outlooks from near term to a seasonal perspective, and then summarize things and have time for questions. So we'll start out with precipitation over the last 30 days, and you're looking at a combination product here with National Weather Service radar estimated precipitation totals shaded on the map. And then laid over top of that are the observed values from our Kentucky Mesonet stations across the state. And as you take a look at that, you can see that the heaviest amounts of precipitation have been across the southern tier of the state and eastern tier, with amounts over the last 30 days approaching 8 to 10 inches in some areas. As you move farther north along the Ohio River, you have areas that are closer to normal, a few areas that are maybe even a little drier, with amounts that are 4 inches plus or minus in that area. So for the most part, a pretty wet month. March and May are generally our wettest months of the year, and that's certainly been the case this year. If we branch out to or extend out to 30 or 60 days, excuse me, so now we're going back through March and February, and the pattern's very similar. That's a little bit drier to the north, up in the northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, and then along the Ohio River and wetter to the south. And again, the values here range from 7, 8, 9 inches to the north to over 17 inches. In the case of our mesonet station on top of Black Mountain, where you have an orographic effect on precipitation, over 22 inches of precipitation there. And the 90-day picture, again, the colors change because we're adding 30 more days. And so this is essentially from the beginning of the year. And now we're well over 20 inches in the south. And the northern areas, again, some locations there, Mason County, less than 8 inches on the map there, but otherwise 11, 12 inches precipitation. Actually, probably want to take a closer look at that 7 number and see whether that might be an error in the map. As you get into Western Kentucky, last year, Western Kentucky was particularly wet early on, and again, this year it's been very wet as you get over toward the Mississippi River and the Jackson Purchase area. So if we take those numbers and look at them in terms of percent of normal on these maps, we're looking again at the 30, 60, and 90-day maps all on one page. So it's kind of small, but if you look at the legend there, the areas that are shaded in northern Kentucky that are sort of the tan and yellow, those are areas that are a near normal to maybe a little bit below, just a little bit below normal in terms of precipitation. And again, you can see that a swath of the state and extending into southern Ohio that was a little bit drier over the last 30 days. But otherwise, you see a lot of greens and blues in particular. The blues, light blues, are 150 to 200% of normal precipitation, and the darker blues are higher than that. As you extend from the 30 days to the 60 and 90 days, again, like before, you see a same general pattern on the map that it's been a little bit drier in the north, but when we get those longer periods, those amounts again are anywhere from normal to about 125% of normal. So wetter than average all across the state, and in some cases, large portions of south, central, and eastern Kentucky have been 150 to 200% of normal. So very wet pattern. And kind of capturing a little bit of that in a broader perspective, and put in a couple slides here for the first time. These are experimental, so there's no warranty per se on these, but we're trying to capture what's happening in terms of precipitation patterns across the state. We've talked about this at on some of our previous webinars. So this graph is showing statewide average precipitation for the January, February, and March period, first 3 months of the year. So each dot is a previous year. And the if you look at the graphic, the boxes there, the white boxes by decade capture the middle 60% of the years. So the middle 6 out of 10 years in terms of precipitation. And then the wider box with the sort of beige type of color simply extends over the range of the data for that particular decade. So if you're looking at the boxes there, you can kind of get a sense that there hasn't been a lot of change in terms of precipitation January, February, March. The smoothing curve there tries to kind of follow the average, kind of adjusting to it as it changes through time. If you look at the white boxes, you can see, for example, the 1980s, that decade, most of the years were much drier in the January, February, March period. But otherwise, there's not a strong pattern of change there through time. But when we look at the next slide, which is going to take us from April, May, and June into the spring, first part of the growing season, you see a very different story. So here, again, the same sort of explanation. If you look at the trend line or the smoothing curve, you can see that it is trending up from the 1920s and 30s. It was around 12.5 inches Now it's up to over 15 inches. So that's a pretty significant increase in terms of average precipitation. And then again, look at the white boxes there that are capturing, again, the sort of what was the most common pattern for that decade. So that's capturing the middle 6 years with the drier two extreme years on the bottom in the beige, and the wettest 2 years in the top part of the beige. So you can see that that white box has really elevated higher, and in general, over the last few decades, we've seen an increase in precipitation. The other thing to point out here is that, especially since the 1980s, there's been a very high degree of variability from year to year. So we've been getting wetter, but we've also had some real swings in terms of extremely wet years or very, very dry years within that period. So increasing precipitation, but a lot of uncertainty from year to year. So wanted to show those because, again, we've been talking about how wet it's been, and this kind of puts it into a little bit more of a historical perspective. All right, moving on to temperature. March was a warm month. Whether you look at the average maximum temperatures on the left, where we were, you know, somewhere in the range of about 4 or 5 degrees above normal over much of the state. If you look at the average low temperatures, they were even warmer, in some cases 6 to about 8 degrees above normal in parts of the state. But bottom line, throughout the Midwest, throughout Kentucky, it was a warm March. Okay, soil moisture and groundwater. We've been seeing these maps for over the winter months, with a lot of green on the left and a lot of blue on the right, simply indicating that there's a lot of soil moisture out there. Whether we're looking at the kind of upper column or whether we're looking deeper down into the groundwater level. A lot of moisture out there, not just in our area, but throughout the Mid-South and up through the Midwest and Great Plains. And kind of going along with that, we try to highlight some of our Kentucky Mesonet stations where we have soil moisture monitoring, and we selected 4, picked the same 4 this month that we had last month. We're looking at a full 1-year period. The line at the top of the graph on the left, which is from Henderson County, is the 40-inch soil moisture, and the kind of silverish and cyan colored blue lines are the 2 and 4 inch depth. So the closer to the surface, they of course fluctuate much more rapidly than the lower depths there. But again, we see the same signal that we've talked about. That flash drought from last fall really shows up in each one of these a little bit differently, you know, from place to place. But once we came out of that, it's just been consistently wet over most of the state. So again, the upper left, we're looking at Henderson County up along the Ohio River, and the upper right, we're looking in Lewis County, and that station's down in a valley, fairly close to a stream. And so there we're again up along the Ohio River, but you know, close to Maysville, a little bit east of Maysville. Go down to the bottom left, and we're down to the Tennessee border in Clinton County, near the community of Albany there. It's been particularly wet in that part of the state. And then on the lower right, we're looking over in eastern Kentucky in Breathitt County at our station at Quicksand. And again, it's been quite wet over in that part of the state too. Okay, from soil moisture to stream flows. So 7-day average stream flows. I've got a lot of deep blue in there, indicating streams that are in the much above normal category, above the 90th percentile. So down in the Cumberland Basin, in part of the upper Kentucky River Basin, and in the Green River Basin, got some very high stream flows. And again, if you look at the parts of the state earlier that had received much above normal precipitation, those are the areas that we're looking at. But when we get up into the northern part of the state where it's been a bit drier, stream flows are more commonly in the normal range for this time of year. And then extending that out over a 28-day average, again, the wet pattern has been very persistent, not just over the last 30 days, but going back to the last 90 days over much of the state. So you see a similar pattern, very much above normal stream flows over much of the state. And we've had some flooding issues, in particular in the southeastern part of the state, with more impacts, lesser impacts maybe in the Green River Basin and such, but really a persistent issue with either flooding or very high stream flows now for some time. And now we're looking at current flood stage in terms of river gauges here in the state. And you can see, again, for the most part, there's no flooding. We've got just a few that are near flood stage on the Kentucky River, and then on the Green River, there's one gauge still with some minor flooding. And again, these stream flows have gone down a little bit. You can see as you get over to the lower Ohio and Mississippi that we've got the high water there. And you look up into Indiana and see the Wabash River, which is certainly a flood-prone river over the last few years in particular. And you see that standing out there. Now on to the drought monitor. Again, if you hone in on Kentucky, there's no hint of drought anywhere within hundreds of miles of us. In order to find a little bit of drought, we need to go to the south, and we pay attention to the south and the southeast because it's not uncommon that when drought develops in Kentucky that it kind of creeps up from the south. So we do see some drought developing, very moderate drought in short term in Florida and across to southern part of Texas there along the Gulf Coast. And then seeing a little bit of drought out in the western states in the Four Corners area, and then out farther along the west coast and up to the Pacific Northwest. But again, this map is pretty tame compared to some that we've seen in the past. In terms of looking at change over the last month, again, the drought to our south has been developing drought, where things have been getting drier. There's a 1, in some cases 2 class degradation in terms of drought starting to develop and intensify a little bit there. Otherwise, not a whole lot of change. And when we look at, again, at the drought maps, obviously there's just not a whole lot that we're concerned about at this point in time. But again, as we saw last summer and moved into the fall, that can change pretty quickly. Now from looking at current conditions to impacts, we're in the spring season, the storm, severe weather season, and we had our share of it over the last 30 days. I think that March 2nd and 3rd wave of storms we had covered on the last webinar, but just the way the calendar came, we picked that up again within the 30-day window, but I won't talk about that one per se. We had a couple other events that I'll kind of highlight. The 12th and 13th with severe storms, produced hail, tornadoes, damaging winds. Again, should have been flash flooding instead of flash warning. I'll have to get that changed. From the Green River area down to the Barren River area and eastward across the state, had some fairly significant accumulations of hail in some places. And then on the 29th, it was a very windy day. We had strong winds, some cases in conjunction with storms, in other cases, not in conjunction with thunderstorms, but just very strong winds and numerous high wind reports coming from across the state. We did have one tornado in that event that occurred up in Henderson County, and wanted to highlight that one on the next slide because it came very near to our Kentucky Mesonet station there in the Graham Hill area, a little bit east of Henderson, and we recorded a wind gust of 90 miles an hour as that tornado passed pretty close to our station. I think we looked at the map and decided it was about a kilometer, less than a mile from our station in terms of the path of the tornado. And I think that's at least the second time that we've seen a tornado path that came pretty near one of our stations. And that 90 mile an hour gust, I believe, is the third highest that we've recorded at one of our Mesonet stations. The highest gust was 101 miles per hour down in the Murray area a few years ago. That was straight line winds instead of a tornado. So Megan, I'll send it back to you and let you pass it off to Matt and let him give us an update on the ag perspective.
All right, thanks for that review of the past month. I will go ahead and pass it on to Matt Dixon of the UK Ag Weather Center.
All right, excuse me. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Stu. Hope everyone is doing well and can hear me all right. I'm on my cell phone, just like most everyone at UK and around the state at that. I'm working from home now. Despite everything that is happening with this COVID-19, the weather seems to be cooperating pretty good as of late for ag. Mother Nature finally gave us some breaks from the wet weather the past couple of weeks, and we've even seen some sunny skies today. We just finished what will be our 6th straight month of above normal precip. Saying that towards the end of March, as I was saying, we were seeing more in the way of breaks from the rain. We did see, you know, accumulations of a ½ inch, of an inch here and there, but the breaks in between those rainfall events were becoming more extended. But also, in addition to that, the breaks brought some more sunshine. They also brought some breezy conditions at times, and this allowed grounds to finally get that chance to dry out a bit. After some rain across the southern half of the state on the last day of March, it looks like we are getting into an extended stretch of dry weather to begin April. Only minimal chances with limited accumulations this weekend. So that's all a bright spot here. After a wet March, we definitely need that dry weather. It's also been warm across the area for the majority of March. A benefit of that warm month has been early pasture growth and allowing producers to let their livestock start grazing again. The latest monthly crop progress and condition report at the end of March cited that good quality hay is still in short supply. You can see those numbers over there in the top left. Despite 41% of hay supply in that short to very short category, there were slight improvements in all categories from last month. But again, now we start to graze again, which will help matters, and we can look forward to that first cut later this spring. So looking just below, cattle condition also improved in each category from February. Back in February, 65% sat in the good to excellent category, and now we sit to 77% at the end of March. So quite the jump there. Very minimal amount in that poor category, which is definitely something we like to see. Looking ahead, producers will be rotating pastures to keep up with increased growth, might keep renovating sites that were used over the winter for feeding, and then start preparing for the first hay harvest down the road. Alfalfa producers are now actively scouting for alfalfa weevil, pests for the crop. Producers start scouting for larvae when degree day totals hit 190 degree days, and the state has surpassed this total with the warm second half of March. You can see all those values in the map down there in the lower right for each county across Kentucky. Looking at crops, the condition of winter wheat also sits in great condition as farmers are in the process of fertilizing. As you can see up there on top, over 80% sits in the good to excellent category. As long as the ground dries up sufficiently, the next couple of weeks is normally when we see in Kentucky start planting corn. Soil temperatures are sufficient right now. We did have some cool mornings recently, and temperatures dropping back into the 30s, but temperatures getting back in the 70s this upcoming week will help out, and I'm not seeing any other freezing temperatures or temperatures in the 30s at that over the upcoming week. So that'll definitely help. I believe Stu is going to discuss a bit after me, but they have a great resource on the Mesonet website to monitor soil temps for many stations across Kentucky. If you take out the past couple of cold mornings, 2-inch soil temperatures have been generally in the 50s and 60s. So that's something we like to see. Looking farther out, and unfortunately for farmers, I have to say this, outlooks, Stu's going to talk a little bit about it here in a second, but they do point toward above normal rainfall for the remainder of April. So, of course, that's going a little farther out. I mean, it's just April 2nd right now, and uncertainty generally increases the farther we go out. So hopefully some of that uncertainty in the forecast a little farther out turns into some dry weather. So let's move on to the next slide with that. So moving to horticulture, hort specialists are now reporting that many apple and pear trees are now in bloom or close to it. Producers will now start evaluating the risk for fire blight, major disease for these trees, and the potential application of protected antibiotics. So spraying those. In cooperation with UK plant pathologists, we made a fire blight prediction model to assess the risk for any particular county across the state. You can see this map in the top left. It shows the risk as of April 1st. Looking at that, most of the state is in that low risk category, some marginal in eastern Kentucky, but for the most part, risk is low right now. But look for that risk to increase with above normal rainfall and outlooks moving forward. Luckily, freezing temperatures have been non-existent as of late, even the past few days. Temperatures, I think, bottomed out in the middle 30s. Saying that, I talked with hort specialists in the National Weather Service recently, and frost advisories and freeze warnings will be needed moving forward. Strawberries are blooming and several fruit trees are approaching bloom. Strawberries become susceptible to temperatures of 30 degrees at bloom or lower. For fruit trees, it's really back in the 20s at this point in their development. So down there in the lower left, I also included an updated line graph from last month I made for the Fruit Facts newsletter. It shows growing degree day accumulations over the past several years. Once again, growing degree days are essentially used to relate temperatures over the course of the month to vegetative growth. The jump in the line would mean a warm period. We've seen this late in March. Flat lines point to a cool period. Taking a look at the graph, 2020 is the green line. We see that big jump at the end of March, which looking at the graph is pretty common among the other years. That's when we got fairly warm temperatures in the 70s here in Kentucky. We are slightly ahead of last year's pace, but still behind 2017, 2018. I went ahead and put 2007 on the graph once again because that's the year of that devastating Easter freeze. Luckily, looking at the outlooks, they all point toward above normal temperatures in addition to that above normal rainfall through the month of April. Through the month of April. Not to steal Stu's thunder right now, but that's keeping any freezing temperatures out of the picture. So that's good news. All in all, that's what I have for future reference in the available recording after the webinar. I included earliest safe planting dates for various vegetables. Those dates fluctuate according to the part of the state you live in, whether that's western, central, or eastern Kentucky. Despite it being warm, we are still a ways out from safe planting dates for those warm season vegetables, tomatoes, cucumbers, you name it. So in closing, like I said before, despite the whole COVID-19 situation, there is some good news in the ag sector. That's great to see. Hopefully that continues through the month of April and we get some additional dry conditions. So with that, I'll send it back to you, Stu.
Thanks, Matt. You referred to the soil temperatures, and again, we have that data, as you mentioned there, Matt, on our website. The menu bar there for data, if you click on that on our website and drop down to soil, you can get that information for specific stations. But in preparing for this webinar, I asked our IT folks if we could put together a soil temperature map that's just a snapshot of current conditions. So this was just taken today at 12:30. You'd mentioned there, Matt, that temperatures during the day had been warming up pretty nicely here over the last week or so with the or a couple weeks with the warmer temperatures. And you can see that here with this map that we've got some temperatures in the western part of the state that are in the mid to upper 50s and well into the 60s in some cases. And then elsewhere, generally in the mid 50s in most of the state. Again, this can vary quite a bit based on soil conditions and the actual siting of the stations and that sort of thing. But it gives you, if you look not just at one value, but at a series of values on the map, you get a pretty representative picture of what's going on in terms of soil temperatures. So again, just put this product together the last day or two, and we'll look to continue development of this going forward to make it something that's more useful for farmers out there. Okay, now looking ahead, the 7-day quantitative precipitation forecast, Matt kind of alluded a little bit of what's to come here. And again, it does look a little bit better than it has. If you look at Kentucky and pick it out on that map there, you can see that over the next week, we're expecting somewhere close to normal precipitation, maybe even a bit on the lighter side in some cases there, about an inch or less across the state. So again, we've had quite a few weeks here where that's not been the case, where we've been particularly wet. So going forward beyond 7 days, the 6 to 10 day outlook, again, pattern is pretty familiar by now. Warm conditions in the eastern US. We've had ridging in the east, allowing the flow of warm, moist air up from the south, while there's been a trough in the western US and colder than normal temperatures in that area. But while the pattern of temperature has been warm and dry, kind of the extremes, precipitation patterns are expected to be pretty wet across the most of the country. Just a few areas, some continued dryness there in Florida, but otherwise a slightly enhanced probability of above normal precipitation. The little bit darker green there across Tennessee and into the Carolinas is indicating an area of 50 to 60% likelihood of above normal precipitation. So when you look at the percentage combined with just the extent of area that's covered, kind of raises the confidence regarding precipitation here going forward. We look at the 8 to 14 day outlook. Again, same general pattern. Confidence is a little bit weaker, so we still expect to be above normal temperatures, but the probabilities are not quite as high. And so there we're looking at areas that are 40 to 50% chance of above normal temperatures, about a 33% chance of near normal, and then about a 1 out of 6 chance of below normal temperatures there. And then likewise on temperature or precipitation there, we're generally in the 40 to 50% probability of above normal precipitation. So that's the favored outcome there. And again, it's really across almost the entire country. And then the outlook for the entire month, similar pattern. But as Matt alluded to a little bit in just reading some of the discussion on the forecast, the outlooks, the signals and the models are pretty convincing, pretty consistent for the next couple of weeks. But as we get into the back half of April, there's a little bit more uncertainty, some indication that there could be a shift, a change in the pattern. But again, not a lot of confidence in that quite yet. So at this point, I think the smartest thing to do is to go with the old standard of assuming that we'll see a persistence of the pattern but at the same time, in the back of our mind, keeping a note that there are some indications that we could see a switch in the weather pattern toward the second part of April. And for us, that could mean things cooling down a bit in terms of our temperatures, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And then a seasonal outlook for April, May, and June. A strongly enhanced likelihood of above normal temperatures, especially in the eastern 2/3 of the state. So that's a very, very strong signal, and really a pretty strong signal over much of the country. A little bit cooler pattern there in the upper plains where we've got equal chances of being above, near, or below normal. And then in terms of precipitation on the right-hand side, again, most of Kentucky's right in that bullseye that's centered on the Midwest and the Ohio River Valley, where we have more than a 50% chance of being above normal in terms of precipitation for that April, May, June period. And again, remember the graph that I showed earlier, this is a region that has seen a very distinct increase in average precipitation during the spring season going back over the last few decades. So this is very consistent with what we've been seeing now for some time. Our friends from the Ohio River Forecast Center up there in Wilmington, Ohio, provide the monthly stream flow outlook. And Kentucky is generally indicated there to be in the above normal stream flow category, 75 to 90th percentile, pretty much across all of the state. Again, they only represent the Ohio Valley, so we miss out on that little bit of Western Kentucky and the Jackson Purchase region over there that drains directly into the Mississippi. So otherwise, if you get outside of Kentucky, we're looking at more normal stream flows. Again, really reflects it's been wetter in our part of the world than some of our neighboring areas. Seasonal flood outlook. Again, nothing too significant here. We're looking at the locations with a 25% or greater chance of flooding over the next 3 months. And other than the green, which is the large percentage of stations, we've got a few there in the orange where there's greater than a 50% chance of minor flooding in those areas. Again, mainly on the Green River and a little bit there on the Kentucky River. And then to summarize and try to pull all that together, again, precipitation has remained persistently above normal for most of Kentucky, reflected at the 30, 60, and 90-day levels. Short-term to long-term outlooks all indicate enhanced likelihood of warmer and wetter conditions compared to normal. I think it's important to point out what or emphasize what Matt indicated, that we have seen a little bit of drying over the last several days, and we've got a little bit of a window here right now where we might see some drying and be able to get out and do some field work. So hoping to see a turn towards some drier weather going forward. Stream flows continue to run above normal. Wet conditions likely to persist. Flood risk continues. As we start to get into through April into May and June, typically that risk starts to decrease. But if we look back historically, some of our major floods, historically significant floods, have occurred in the April window of the year. So it's something we need to be aware of. And then kind of summarizing impacts, as Matt indicated, the warm weather in March has led to some early pasture growth. That's certainly critical after the drought last fall, and easing some of the concerns there about hay shortages, with the window of dry days to be critical here for planting as that season arrives here. So that's all I've got. And Megan, I'll send it back to you.
All right. Thanks, Stu and Matt, for the review of everything and the look forward. So now we're going to open up to the rest of you for a question and discussion section. If you have any questions, you can either type them in the chat box or you can unmute yourself. If you need me to unmute you, just, I guess, tell me somehow. You should be able to raise your hand or something like that. So I'll just give a minute or two just to see if there's anybody, and then we'll move forward. Okay, looks like there are no questions at this time. If you do think that you have a question that you think of later, feel free to email either Stuart Foster and Matt Dixon. Their contact information is on this last page. And just a reminder that our next regularly scheduled webinar will be Thursday, May 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. And we look forward to your participation then. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day for this.
There is a question in the chat box.
Yeah, I see that now. Kevin Parrott asked, they had temperatures in the low 80s in central Kentucky. Does this look to continue with all maps showing above normal for April? Stu, do you want to feedback on that?
Yeah, I'll tackle that, and if anybody else wants to chime in, they can. So, yeah, certainly, you know, we're at the time of year where temperatures can change very, very quickly, and we have looked back from a climatological perspective, certainly seeing cases of 80, 90-degree weather even in the month of April. So it's certainly possible that we could see something like that if we get some, continue with this pattern of ridge in the east and get some clear weather per se. But at this point, I don't think we're expecting that to be a persistent thing quite this early in the year. That would be a little bit unusual. So we do have some folks from National Weather Service on the call too. So if anybody else would like to chime in, have a little bit more information, feel free to do so.
Hey, this is Matt Dixon. Hope you can hear me all right. But I went ahead and got on NCEI, National Center for Environmental Information, and just for reference, I looked at Bowling Green Airport, Warren County Airport, for temperatures for April, and it was showing on the outlooks that they were favoring above normal temperatures. Well, normal maximum temperatures, highs for this time of year in Bowling Green range from the middle 60s first part of April and increase to low to middle 70s toward the end of April. So like I said, outlooks were calling for above normal temperatures. That kind of gives you something to compare to. So
yeah, thanks, Matt.
Thanks for the question, Kevin. That was a great question to ask. Does anybody else have anything else? All right, with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. I will be sending out a recording link when it's available later today. And I hope that we get to see the rest of you Oh, actually, here's another one from John. Do the rain gradients indicate climate change?
Well, they are certainly consistent with what climate projections, what the climate models would project that we should be seeing in this part of the world. Again, I'll leave that to everyone to interpret. But as you look at the data, they do show a very noticeable change from the past. And in some cases, we've got these graphs for other times of the year, but we're looking at changes of 20% or more if we go back to the first half of the 20th century. It's certainly very, very noteworthy as to what's happening. And again, it doesn't mean that we're going to continue on a straight line upwards, but I did do, I've done a little bit of analysis of data, and one thing that stood out is if we look statewide at annual precipitation, we've averaged kind of the last 5 years averaged over that entire period has been over 56 inches, whereas back in the first half of the 1900s, we were in the mid 40s to even low 40s and for certain periods when we were in the drought years there. So again, that's a big increase over time. But again, it's not a straight line upward. So currently we have out of the 5 wettest years on record, 3 of them have happened within the last decade. But if we look back in time, that same thing happened in the 1970s, where we at that point encountered 3 of the 5 wettest years up to that point in time, and then it didn't continue straight up. We didn't just keep breaking that record year after year, but we had previously 3 of the 5 wettest years come together in a short period in the 1950s, and then again in the 1970s, and now it's happened again here in the 20-teens. So again, we may dry out and have some dry years, but what we're seeing is that we're having this clustering of wet years. And we've kind of set a record in the 50s, and then we broke that record in the 70s. Now we've broken that record again. So I think that's telling us something that we need to pay attention to.
All right, I'll give just another minute to make sure that we have no more questions. And I'm watching the chat box this time. You can also feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask out loud. All right, John has another question. Has anyone ever compared tree ring changes to the rain gradients?
I suspect that there are some people doing that, but I'm not familiar with that work here in the state. I know there's some people that have looked at tree rings in the past, but whether anybody's kind of actively looking at that in terms of the recent time period, I'm not sure.
All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up. If you guys think of any other questions that you have, feel free to email. and we will get back with you. And we hope to see you again on May 7th. Have a great day, everybody.